Welcome to Word of Salvation. If you want to explore the history of the popes and deepen your knowledge of the great leaders who shaped the Catholic Church, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it so more people can be inspired by the legacy of faith. The new pope has chosen the name Leo XIV. And many people must be wondering, well, who were the other 13 popes named Leo? In this video we will summarize the lives and pontificates of the first 13 popes named Leo, among whom are counted 5 canonized saints. The first was Saint Leo the Great. He went down in history as Saint Leo the Great. He was the first pope with this name and served from 440 to 461. He lived during the 5th century, a time marked by the fall of the Roman Empire, and his life and pontificate are especially remembered for this context. He was born, perhaps in Rome or perhaps in Tuscany, historians are not certain. He entered the clergy while still young and quickly distinguished himself for his virtue and intelligence. He gained notoriety as a papal advisor and was elected in 440 after the death of Pope Sixtus III. One of the great hallmarks of Leo I's pontificate was his strong reaffirmation of the primacy of the Roman See. He was a firm defender of the Pope's authority, both in the West and the East. During his pontificate, he oversaw all possible ecclesiastical matters, such as episcopal appointments, administration of church property, clerical discipline. He was very concerned about this and the fight against heresies like Pelagianism, Manichaeism, and Priscillianism. Even without speaking Greek, he acted extensively in the Eastern Roman Empire, correcting abuses by bishops, giving orders to patriarchs and addressing the quadri-patriarchates. He is especially remembered for confronting Monophysitism, the heresy that denied Christ's human nature. In this struggle, he wrote the famous Tomus ad Flavianum, which was a key document at the Council of Chalcedon, where Pope Leo's doctrine on the dual nature of Christ was acclaimed as the authentic expression of the Catholic faith. The Council Fathers famously proclaimed, "Peter has spoken through Leo." Beyond the strictly ecclesiastical sphere, Saint Leo the Great played a crucial role in political affairs. Everyone remembers that he was the pope who confronted Attila, king of the Huns, and convinced him not to attack Rome. 3 years later, he negotiated with Genseric, king of the Vandals, preventing destruction and death in the city of Rome. Saint Leo the Great was a tireless preacher. He left 96 sermons, which later earned him the title of Doctor of the Church, one of only 2 popes to be declared Doctors of the Church. After 21 years as pope, he died. He was later recognized as the Great, one of only 3 popes to bear this title. By his mere presence and the absolute confidence he always placed in the Church's enduring nature, Leo was the rock that supported the world as the ancient world was collapsing. He saved what could be saved of the old civilization and prepared the Church for the task that would be demanded of it in the next century, to bring the faith to new peoples and rebuild civilization. Saint Leo II was pope from 682 to 683. He was born in Sicily and succeeded Pope Saint Agatho. Despite his short pontificate of only 10 months, he was the pope responsible for approving the decrees of the Third Council of Constantinople, which met from 680 to 681 and condemned monothelitism, a heretical doctrine systematically condemned by popes from Severinus to Leo I himself. Saint Leo II received the acts of the council, both in Greek and Latin, signed them, and wrote to express his approval in the Epistle Regi Regum to the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IV, in which the Pope masterfully expounds Catholic doctrine on the 2 natures and 2 wills of Christ, denied by the Monothelite heresy. Posterity has always praised Pope Leo II's piety, as well as his charity, eloquence, vast knowledge of both Greek and Latin, and his expertise in ecclesiastical chant. He perfected Gregorian chant, composed many liturgical hymns, and died after just over 10 months as pope in 683. Saint Leo III was pope from 795 to 816. Upon his election, relatives of the previous pope, Adrian I, opposed his election and even attempted Leo III's life during a procession, imprisoned him and locked him up. With the support of the people, he was freed, but not feeling safe in Rome, he went to France to seek the support of King Charlemagne. With Charlemagne's support, he returned to Rome, was welcomed triumphantly, and was able to occupy the papal throne in peace. This happened in the year 800. On Christmas night of that year, Pope Leo III did something that would forever change Catholic and Western history. He restored the Roman Empire by crowning Charlemagne emperor. Thus, this Pope Saint Leo III was the Pope who crowned Charlemagne emperor. His work, especially in Rome, is quite memorable. He is remembered as a great builder of churches. Numerous churches in Rome were enriched by his generosity during his pontificate. The Liber Pontificalis lists at least 100 churches that benefited from St. Leo III's generosity. He died in 816. St. Leo IV was pope from 847 to 855. He was born in Rome and was of Lombard origin. His name is forever linked to the construction of the so-called Leonine city, a fortification, a wall that surrounded the Vatican Hill to protect Rome from Muslim pirate attacks, who shortly before his ascension had invaded and plundered St. Peter's Basilica itself. So he built a wall to protect the Vatican and certain annexed buildings from Muslim attacks. St. Leo IV governed the Church during a very difficult time, the decomposition of Charlemagne's empire and new invasions from the north, east, and in Italy's case from the south, which were Arab invasions. St. Leo IV himself had to take up arms against Muslim pirates who were devastating the Italian coast. With the help of the Campanian League, a military league formed by nobles and lords of southern Italy, Pope Leo IV, personally commanding Roman troops, faced and defeated the Saracen fleet in the decisive Battle of Ostia in 849, which practically thwarted the Arabs' plans to conquer Italy. He is remembered as the pope who defended the Catholic world from Muslim invasions. The Liber Pontificalis always highlighted, in the case of St. Leo IV, his patience, humility, kindness, love of justice, dedication to the study of the scriptures and sanctity. Leo IV was a very firm, decisive pastor, zealous for ecclesiastical discipline, good clergy conduct, a memorable pope who died in 855. Pope Leo V was pope from July to September 903, during the crisis of the 10th century. He was a priest when elected and was from Campania, Italy. Very little is known about his pontificate, and what is known is tragic. As soon as he was elected, he was imprisoned by a rebellious priest named Christopher and incarcerated, where he died perhaps violently after only a short time as pope. Leo VI was pope from May to December 928, another brief pontificate during the Iron Century, the 10th century. Nothing remains from this pope except a letter he wrote to the bishops of Dalmatia, in which he asked them to respect the rights of the Archbishopric of Split. Leo VII was pope for a few months, from 936 to 939. For him there is good news. He was a Roman and a monk who focused all his activity on reforming the Church, especially following the example of Cluny. During his pontificate, St. Odo, abbot of Cluny, went to Rome to reorganize the monasteries of Rome and its surroundings according to the Cluniac reform. Leo VII is memorable for this, and many documents from his papacy demonstrate his concern for ecclesiastical reform. Documents related to the Church in Germany show Leo VII demanding an end to superstitious practices and requiring priests to follow canonical rules. In a tragic period of Church and papal history, he was a ray of light. He died in 939 after about 3 years as pope. Leo VIII was pope from 963 to 965, also during the Iron Century. There were 4 Pope Leos in the Iron Century. He came to the papal throne by the will of Emperor Otto I, of whom he was advisor and secretary. The memory of this pope is not good. In his short pontificate, he was subjugated by imperial interests, and no real records of his decisions remain. They have been lost to time. St. Leo IX was quite different. Born in 1002 to a noble family in Alsace, he was humble, pious, unpretentious, but energetic and determined from an early age. He was elected pope by the influence of Emperor Henry III, but only accepted after canonical rules were followed, meaning the clergy and people of Rome approved his election. It was approved, and he entered Rome as a barefoot pilgrim and was acclaimed pope in February 1049. He, whose name was Bruno, chose the name Leo IX. The short 5-year pontificate of St. Leo IX marks a turning point in the history of both the papacy and the Church itself. While many of his predecessors supported church reform, he was the pontiff who definitively embraced the cause, making the reform movement from Cluny an official cause of the See of Peter. He brought this spirit to all ecclesiastical environments across Christendom, especially through his many journeys in Italy, Germany, and France, convening councils to reform clergy life and corresponding with sovereigns and prelates of other Catholic kingdoms to bring order to the Church in Christendom. He stood out for his strong attack on simony, both in the election of bishops and parish priests as well as abbots. He deposed those who had obtained ecclesiastical offices with money but forgave some who repented. Wherever St. Leo IX traveled, he convened reforming synods, attacking the purchase of church offices and clerical marriage. A very energetic and even heroic pope. He continuously wrote to King Henry III of Germany, Saint Edward of England and Ferdinand I of Leon and Castile, urging them to apply the principles of clergy reform in their kingdoms. Perhaps most importantly, he definitively reformed the Roman Curia, which until then had been dominated by the Italian nobility, and appointed the great reformers of the time to its key positions, men aligned with his purposes. For example, he brought to the Roman Curia the great Saint Peter Damian, Cardinal Humbert of Silva Candida, Frederick of Liège, later Pope Stephen IX, and was always supported by Saint Hugh of Cluny. He also brought or relied on the services of the monk Hildebrand, the future Pope Saint Gregory VII. It was also this great Pope Leo IX who had the idea later implemented by Nicholas II that popes should be elected only by cardinals. In terms of doctrine, Saint Leo IX reinforced Catholic dogma. His main doctrinal condemnation was against Berenger of Tours, a heretic who preached against transubstantiation. It was also during or just after Leo IX's pontificate, due to the schismatic ambitions of the Patriarch of Constantinople, that the tragic East-West Schism occurred. He died in 1054 and was canonized in 1087. The next Pope Leo X, lived in the 16th century. He was pope from 1513 to 1521. His name was Giovanni de' Medici, born in Florence, the youngest son of the famous Lorenzo the Magnificent. Leo X is generally praised as a peaceful, intelligent, cultured man, with solid religious training and even irreproachable morals. His only temptation of the flesh seems to have been gluttony. However, it is undeniable that Leo X was more concerned with the political affairs of the Papal States than with the Church's spiritual interests. He was also deeply passionate about the arts. He wrote that great writers are the rule of life and consolation in misfortune. He believed that protecting scholars and acquiring books were among the most important functions of a leader. Thus, he was a great patron of the arts, tirelessly funding artists and architects, promoting banquets, festivities and celebrations, and enthusiastically renovating churches and palaces. A true Renaissance pope, with all the good and bad that implies. Leo X's pontificate is particularly remembered for the signing of the Concordat of Bologna with Francis I of France in 1516, an agreement by which the French monarch obtained the right to appoint bishops and abbots, while the payment of annates to the Holy See was restored and the Pope's absolute primacy over any ecumenical council was recognized. While criticized, the Concordat also had its advantages. Under Leo X, the Fifth Lateran Council, a reformist council often forgotten due to the subsequent Council of Trent, was concluded. However, its deliberations received little attention from the Pope himself. At the same time, a radical movement of protest was emerging in Germany. In 1517, during Leo X's pontificate, Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation. Leo X was informed of the revolt but initially underestimated it. He sent the famous Cardinal Cajetan to Germany to dissuade the rebellious Friar Luther, but this failed. In 1520 he published the bull Ex Surge Domini, condemning Luther's theses as heretical, false and scandalous. The following year, 1521, saw the definitive break with Luther's excommunication by Leo X. The excommunication document can be considered the last document written by a pope to a united Christendom. Leo X died that same year in December 1521. Pope Leo XI was pope from April 1 to April 27, 1605. Like Leo X, he was also a Medici. Alessandro de' Medici and also from Florence. At his election he was 70 years old, but only 10 days after his coronation he died. Thus, his pontificate was too brief to leave anything significant. It is known that he helped Emperor Rudolph II in his struggle against the Turks and that, as a cardinal, Leo XI was a great friend of Saint Philip Neri, whom he venerated as a saint. Throughout his life, he demonstrated asceticism, goodness, generosity to others and strictness with himself. He also detested nepotism, which still prevailed in the Curia even after the Tridentan Reform. He died, apparently after a fall from a horse, at the end of April 1605. Leo XII was Annibale della Genga. He was born in the Papal States in 1760 and was elected pope in 1823, during the Age of Revolutions. A memorable aspect of his pontificate in person is that he was very frail and sickly, but surprised everyone with his energy and firmness. He was austere, devout, and absolutely opposed to the novelties of modernity. He strongly opposed the revolutionary spirit and religious indifferentism in his first encyclical, Ubi Primum, which foreshadowed the condemnations of future popes like Gregory XVI and Pius IX against liberalism and the modern world. Leo XII was accused of indecision. Some said he was manipulated by his advisors, but in practice, he showed great discernment on many occasions. For example, he reconciled with Cardinal Consalvi, the great figure of Pius VII's pontificate, who belonged to an opposing faction but was a man of immense experience. Leo XII visited Consalvi on his deathbed and sought his guidance. He also dissolved the Congregation of State, which existed in the Holy See, and sought to usurp papal power, thus reassuming full governance of the Church. In international relations he was conciliatory, continuing the Concordat policies begun under Pius VII. He was the Pope during the independence of Latin American countries and recognized and supported English Catholic emancipation. He dedicated himself to cultural and spiritual restoration, reorganized universities, restored the Roman College to the Jesuits, which was important in the long run, and began the reconstruction of the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls. He was much slandered by liberals but always remained faithful to the Church's spiritual mission. He died in 1829. Leo XIII, the penultimate Pope Leo, was Pope from 1878 to 1903. His name was Gioacchino Pecci and he succeeded Pope Pius IX. His pontificate was very long and subject to much criticism, both from contemporaries and later generations. In doctrine he always categorically condemned the errors of modernity. His first encyclical, Inscrutabili Dei Concilio, already denounced the evils of revolution and announced Leo XII's desire to re-Christianize society. During Leo XII's pontificate, the Church was persecuted in many countries. Under Masonic governments in Germany, Leo XIII had to fight the Kulturkampf series of anti-Catholic measures promoted by Bismarck and managed to restore many church freedoms after a long diplomatic struggle, with the support of an important Catholic party that emerged in Germany at the end of the 19th century, the famous Centrum. In France, his policy was different. He tried to contain the advance of secularism in the French Republic by promoting the so-called ralliement policy, which meant urging French Catholics to accept the Republic. He dissociated the Catholic cause in France from the monarchist cause, allowing Catholics to live well in the Republic. This policy was highly criticized and ultimately failed, actually strengthening the Church's enemies as seen under his successor, St. Pius X, with the 1905 law separating Church and State in France. Intellectually, Leo XIII is remembered for promoting the revival of Thomism with the encyclical Aeterni Patris. He was an intellectual, a doctor pope. He believed that restoring Thomistic scholastic philosophy was essential to combat modern errors and used this foundation in various encyclicals, such as Immortale Dei on the Christian state, Libertas Prestantissimum on true freedom versus modern religious liberty, and Arcanum Divini Sapientiae on marriage already under attack. He fought ideologies, socialism and communism, and reaffirmed Catholic social doctrine in Rerum Novarum. He didn't create it as is often thought. Rerum Novarum was a milestone but more of a reaffirmation than a creation. Leo XIII also firmly condemned Freemasonry in documents like Humanum Genus and encouraged the study of scripture and church history, something especially dear to us here. He wrote the interesting encyclical Si Penumero Considerants, dedicated to Catholic historians. Spiritually, he fostered the revival of Catholic piety, with strong devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Holy Rosary. He was very dedicated to the Sacred Heart, the Rosary, and devotion to the Holy Spirit. Many of his encyclicals are devotional. He encouraged popular Catholic religious practices, and at the end of his pontificate, he fought the Americanist heresy, a form of ecclesial liberalism in the U.S. that tended to disdain tradition and hierarchy, publishing an encyclical condemning Americanism. Leo XIII also vigorously promoted missions. His pontificate was a time of great missionary impetus, especially in Africa and China. He especially encouraged the creation of indigenous clergy in mission lands. Leo XIII died at 93 in 1903 and was the last pope before Leo XIV to have this important name, one of the most important papal names in history, perhaps alongside Pius, Innocent, and Gregory. Let us ask the great popes, not only the Leos but especially them, St. Leo I, St. Leo II, St. Leo III, St. Leo IV, St. Leo IX, to intercede for their successor, Pope Leo XIV, and that he may be docile to the inspirations of the Holy Spirit to lead the Church where it needs to go, as they in their time knew how to lead. If you enjoyed this content, subscribe to Word of Salvation, like this video and share it. Comment below, which Pope Leo inspires you the most? May God bless your journey of faith and see you in the next video.